Welcome to an ABA Legal Technology Resource Center webinar. The topic for today is preparing for a paperless practice. With us, we have Jackie Risley from ABBYY and Ben Sporrell from Conarc. Jackie and Ben have about a quarter century of experience in the field, and they're going to share some of the advantages of a paperless practice, some of the key elements, and some of the basic steps that you can take to help eliminate paper from your practice. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jackie and Ben.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Today, Ben and I are here to talk about how you can implement paperless processes in your legal practice, whether that's within a firm or whether that's within corporate counsel, to improve your efficiencies and also really to reduce your overhead. So you'll see both hard and soft ROI when you put in a paperless practice correctly. So those are the things that we're really going to be focused on today. So here's our agenda. We want to talk about what the benefits are of going paperless, both for your overall practice as well as for you individually. Some of the things that will help you be successful as a paperless firm, an overview of the process of going paperless, and some important things to consider as we look at how you can be more successful. And a little bit about us at the very end. So Ben, with that, if you'd like to address the why go paperless idea.
Sure. Thanks, Jackie, and thanks everybody for joining us. So when we started to talk about our presentation today, we said, why don't we start with why go paperless? And really the answer for going paperless is all about efficiencies, whether it's time savings, money savings, better servicing your clients, whatever the case might be, you should be able to find some sort of benefits and savings. And in doing that, we went out and found a few pieces of research that we thought were interesting based on the topic. The first one is from PwC and a firm called Emerson Technology. And basically what they say is professionals spend up to 50% of their time looking for information, while they spend only 5 to 15% of their time reading the information they've retrieved. And what that stood out to us to say was that people spend half of their working life not adding any value to the process. And obviously that's a pretty startling figure. And we're going to work that into an equation as we go along here. But the second piece of research we found that sort of played along with that was from IDC. And what it says is that document management systems can increase productivity by up to 50%. So we said, well, let's go back and run some quick calculations about what this can mean to an individual firm. And we took an assumption that rather than finding 50% savings, maybe you could find 25% savings. So pretty conservative estimate. And said, okay, if you were to save 25% of the time of a 40-hour work week, that's 10 hours. And if you were to take that 10 hours and spend it over a 50-week work year, you're talking about 500 hours. So the average firm could save 500 hours per user per year. And we're not going to make any assumptions about how you spend that time. You determine, what it is you want to do, and if it's spending time improving that 5 to 15% calculation and servicing your clients or thinking through issues, that's up to you. But pretty startling statistics about the time that you can save. The next thing that we're going to talk about is sort of the paperless benefits for the practice, and Jackie's going to take that over again.
So thanks, Ben. I think that one of the clear things that we're seeing in the industry is that going paperless is really going to be inevitable. And there's a need to conform with the court requirements to go paperless. So we see stories in the newspaper about more courts that are requiring paperless filings. We work with a number of courts that are looking at how they can digitize these processes. And there are going to be all kinds of benefits from in the government space, in how efficient the court system becomes. And so I think that that's really a positive move. But obviously it puts the pressure on attorneys to be able to adapt to the system. You're also going to have on an individual level an improved responsiveness to your client. So, if I'm your client and I call in and I have a question about some matter that you're working on for me, and of course you have how many matters on your desk at any given time, you have to go send somebody to go pull a file, dig through some papers so that you can call me back and answer my questions. And, that's the kind of thing that as customer service really improves across the board because of technology, clients are expecting that same kind of high level of service from the professionals that they work with. But also that improved responsiveness to clients has the benefit of allowing you to allocate resources better. If you have paralegals and support staff working on the things that are important to your firm, instead of pulling files, instead of doing kind of the tedious kind of work that's associated with file storage, then you can be getting more value from those employees. Maybe you can hold the line on your per employee cost, and you can increase the overall profitability. So you look at those overtime costs and talk about less time and labor spent creating, filing, retrieving files, less office space, less storage space devoted to file storage. What if you could improve the work environment? What if you could not have a whole room in your office that was devoted to storing paper? And frankly, that a room full of paper is not as secure as an electronic file storage that you can back up in other areas and those kinds of things. So you're also going to have less time and money spent delivering physical documents, so mailing documents, hiring couriers to move documents around for you, having to go to the courthouse to drop off a stack of papers at whatever office. All of those things eat away at a firm's efficiencies and profitability. So for the individual attorneys, there are also still benefits. We know that sometimes on a corporate level we put in some improvements that feel like they're a disadvantage for the people who have to do the work. And document management technologies really have the opposite effect. They're going to make you more effective as an attorney, and you're going to be better able to serve your clients, and they're going to stay with you. You're going to have more loyalty from them. So there's things like no more waiting for someone to pull a file. As an attorney, you're the expert. You're the person someone's counting on. And so your ability to get to exactly the piece of information you need when someone needs it is really important to that relationship. Document management technology will allow you to spend less time on research and preparation. And what I mean by that is if you have to pull out a file folder and you have to dig through to find everything related to a certain matter, that's going to take you time to go in and find that. If you have the option of having a full text index, for instance, so I have all of my documents scanned into the system, and I've made the text in the document searchable, I can go in and I can look for precisely the piece of information I need, whether that's the information that a client is asking me about, or whether I'm working on a contract negotiation, and I want to refer to other cases in which I've had a need for a similar clause, and I want to compare how those are. All of those benefits and all of that efficiency can come from having a document. It allows you to collaborate and share more documents more easily and more securely. So we've all seen those situations where we think we're collaborating with documents over email, but who has the latest version and who made a change that someone wasn't aware of. And email is not all that secure, especially these days as we're getting these things on our cell phones and on our iPads, and where we're trying to answer important questions that way. And again, as I said earlier, we're going to answer questions, we're going to provide advice sooner, you're going to increase that professionalism and client satisfaction that you're really looking for as an attorney. So with that, Ben is going to talk a little bit about the keys to being a paperless firm and how you can make that successful.
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of things that go into selecting a paperless system and how to get your firm to that point. We picked out just a couple of the highlights that we think are important. The first one is you need to make it seamless to your users. And what I want you to do is sit back and think about how you access this information today, whether it's paper files or network directories or folders in your email system or some other process that you might have in place. You need to think about how your users access the information right now and how they could access it in the future and make it so that it's a part of their normal workflow. You want to make this something that's easy for them to adopt, where they see the benefit and can really deliver on those benefits as well. The second piece here is you really need to plan and organize in great detail. And you'll probably hear Jackie and I talk about this a few times as we go through here. But There's systems out there that can help you with some of the things that we've outlined on the first slides about why you should do this and how you find those time savings, but that's only going to happen if you put a system in place with a lot of thought and a lot of structure. So you really need to sit down again, think about your environment and how it's structured right now, and sort of map that out with whatever paperless system you select. The next component is you need to pick something that's customizable to your firm. And there are a lot of products out there that are sort of vanilla off-the-shelf systems, and some of those are okay, but I would recommend that you find something that's at least somewhat customizable, whether it has the ability to change field names or assign your own categories and subcategories for documents, or some component of customization so that it matches with your users' naming convention, workflow, and things of that nature. The next item is it's important for this to integrate in with your other critical systems. And this is probably an item you'll hear us touch on a few times as well, but your document management cannot exist in a bubble. If you do, you won't see the time savings. So if the answer is, at the end of a process, you take a paper document, scan it, and put it into your system every time, well, then you're adding a step to a process. Now, you may see benefits down the road, but think about ways that you can integrate into systems where you're already creating documents in an electronic format and how you can share those amongst your systems and things of that nature. So integration between the products used, whether it's your email or a time and billing system or something else that you use all day, every day that generates content, think about how that can fit into your paperless plan. And the last is you need to train and manage to the new process. Once you thought this all out and created a process and a workflow, you really need to train your users thoroughly on what that process is and how the system functions, but then also manage to that process as well. You really need to allow them to be responsive with their day-to-day responsibilities through the system. So one of the things that I found is great is managing to the process. When somebody asks you to identify something and you don't find it in the paperless system of the process and they try to sort of circumvent the process that you created, manage to that. Go back and say, hey, we can address this issue, but we need to get it into the system, and use that as sort of a learning experience for how you want to manage the process going forward.
So we'd like to give you kind of briefly an overview of the document life cycle, and this is typical, I think, for all industries, but we like to speak to it specifically for how it can benefit attorneys and law firms and legal departments. So the first step in a document life cycle typically is capture, and that's a term that you'll hear a lot of people in the industry throw around. Some people use it as synonymous with scanning, and oftentimes it is. But it goes beyond scanning. So there are multiple kinds of documents that you work with at any given time. There are documents that have always been electronic. There are things that our industry will call documents that are in fact really not, that they're recordings, things like that. Capture also takes scanning one step farther in that there are technologies available that can make that scanning process itself more efficient, as well as allow you to use the documents to scan better. So those are some of the kinds of things that Ben and I would hope that we can cover with you here today. So as Ben talked about when you were talking about, what are the keys to being successful? And one of the things he said was really important is planning. And that's absolutely the case, that a true document management system, truly going paperless, is more than scanning documents in and putting them in a file folder on the network. Because we all know that they're hard to find, there can be multiple copies. So the first thing we really need to do is look at how do we define a taxonomy, a naming convention for the document that describes the document and the relationship between the document. So for instance, in any given matter, I want them all to be associated to a specific client and a specific matter, but I also have individual documents within that. And so there will be some standard naming conventions that you'll need based on the way that all attorneys do business, and there'll be some that you'll need to look at that'll be specific to how you do business. And that planning step helps you to be successful down the line. You put in the work kind of at the front end. So with that taxonomy, what we're often talking about is metadata, which is the word you describe the document itself. So if I have a document that is associated with a matter, I know what I have. There's other things about that document I need to know. Who is the client? What was the date? What kind of a document is it? all of those things are the metadata. And a document management system will use that metadata to help you retrieve it effectively, help organize it correctly, help make it more than just a filing cabinet. The other option is to full text index, and that means that when I scan in a document, typically it ends up being a document that I have more or less a picture of. I can't necessarily get to the words that are on that document. So certain kinds of software help you take kind of that next step, where the document gets scanned in, perhaps the metadata gets associated with it automatically, but then the document itself can also be converted to text. And you have some options there that we'll talk about in a minute. But some organizations will look at it as an either-or proposition. And again, going back to the statement we made earlier, you have to look at what best means with your organization. I tend to think that a both-and approach works better. So it may be that you want to do a full text search of documents, but you only want to search text from documents maybe within the last year or within the last 6 months. And having both kinds of information about your documents helps you to be able to do those kinds of things. We talked about the efficiency. How do I get immediately to the information I need without pulling out a file folder and trying to flip through pages? So when we look at the format, things that we want to look at, we want to look at usability, sustainability, and what the standard is. So in terms of usability, I certainly don't want to pick a format that is not going to meet the needs of my clients, the people in my office, anyone else I have to collaborate with on those documents. So we know that there are requirements around certain documents having to stay in their native format. So we really need a full evaluation of what kind of documents we have coming in and what format we need to have them in to work with. But we want to look at the sustainability of those formats. So, not that I'm happy about admitting this, but there are probably some of us who are old enough to remember doing word processing in WordPerfect. Well, if I had a WordPerfect document right now on a 3.5-inch disk, it would be really difficult for me to retrieve that document onto my current computer and to be able to read it. So we're really looking at picking a format that is going to be around for the long term and that I'm going to be able to share and that other people will be able to open. The emerging standard within the legal community, both from the government court side as well as from the legal department side, appears to be PDF-A. It's an archival version of PDF. We all download PDFs all the time, so we know they're easy to read in a browser. They're very simple to. They don't take up a lot of memory on your computer. The special archival format, which is approved by National Archives and Records and other associations, is really kind of where the industry is going. So you need to look at when you're putting in your imaging system, do you have a system that can ensure that documents can be in that format? The other thing we need to look at in terms of planning is how much time, effort, and money needs to be spent scanning files. It's important to get those files in there, and we certainly want them, but we don't want it to be such a burden to your staff or so expensive that any return on investment is offset by that, or that you lose the momentum simply because people are unhappy with the amount of work. When we talk about capture software, we can look at ways that we can automate that process. We can eliminate people having to manually key in some of the information about the document. And that helps us to avoid the kinds of errors that happen when we have people typing things in because, everyone is on a deadline, there's a court case coming up, or there's something else that's very urgent. And typos happen. And we can offset some of that with software, take the burden off you and your staff, and just have it be in the system for you. And you really need to take a full picture to capture. So there are all kinds of other kinds of documents that need to be captured to complete a file. So if we look at, we do need to pull in emails, but we don't want emails to reside separately in an email system. We want them to be part of the overall file. We have spreadsheets, we have audio files. As we look at the court system definitions of what is discoverable, we will have more and more kinds of quote-unquote documents that are in fact not documents at all. So we need a system that can pull those things together and make them readily available for you. And with that, I will turn it over to Ben to talk about how you manage those documents after you've captured it?
Yeah, so once we've captured a document, let's talk a little bit about the important steps in managing. And the first one here is to include all file types, and this sort of carries on to Jackie's last point there that, there's a lot of file types out there. Everyone's concerned about their Word, Excel, and PDF, but you really do need to think about images and videos and everything else that you define. And I would add one level to that, which is you want to maintain those in their native format. There's a lot of systems out there that want to sort of lump everything into this one viewable format, sort of like Jackie described before, with a picture of a document. And while that can be great for some systems for viewing purposes, it really loses its credibility in certain places with regards to how you can use it and what's accepted, especially by courts and things of that nature. So, look for a system that allows you to keep things in a native format so that if you have, a Word document, you're looking at a Word document, you're not looking at an image of a Word document. The second piece here is that you really want something that allows you to track the document's history. And what that means is who's accessed it, who's changed it, who's sent it to someone else, what are the permissions of the document, things of that nature. You really want to be able to know where the document's been once you put it into the system. When you do go from paper to paperless, you have some interesting issues that come up. When it was a paper document, if there was really only one version of it and it's sitting on your desk, you know where that's been. When it goes to a paperless environment and it's out on a directory somewhere that multiple people can access, you want to have an audit trail of who's accessed it and what they've done with the document. And it also helps with the third item here, which is how you collaborate with colleagues. And Jackie mentioned a little bit about this before, but a lot of people, when they collaborate on documents, are struggling with sending it back and forth via email, and who's got the correct version of the document, and is it open for editing, or is it read-only because someone else has been in editing? There's a lot of issues that come up with that. So you want to look at a system that allows you to manage those issues. You store one version of the document, or as few versions as possible, and be able to work back and forth, share notes about changes, track them, and things of that nature. The next point is here, you want to connect all of this information. So we talked about linking information or the metadata with the client and a matter or a case number, whatever the hierarchy is for your firm. But really what you want your system to be is your central point of truth. And we use this scenario a lot so that when people think about a client, let's say, they can search for a client and see all of the associated documents there. Or maybe they can bump down one level and say, I want to see all the documents associated with just this specific matter. Or maybe they want to go even one level further and say, I'm looking for something specific to this matter, but certain document types. So you really want to have all that information tied to certain main categories, but also have additional options for searching and sorting information. The next item here is managing the sharing of files and other information with all parties. And so a lot of people, when they think about a paperless system, are concerned about how their employees are accessing the information, but I would say you should go one step further and think about how your clients might need to access that information, how other third parties that are involved in the case might need to access that information, whether that's using something like a client portal or a file sharing tool, whatever the case is. If you're going to go paperless, you should encourage all the parties involved in the process to go paperless with you as well. And there's some security that goes around that you need to think through as well. But it really doesn't do you much good to keep all of your documents in paper and then at the end of the day print them and send them to your clients via FedEx. And then it comes back and you're going through managing that paper process back to paperless again. So think through some of those items as well. The next item here with regards to managing information is assigning and managing workflow through a system. So as information is generated and you need to move it through a given process, you really need to understand that workflow, assign work through the system, and really manage that document and the associated process through the system as well. So look at tools that allow you to not only store a document, but also manage the document and manage the workflow associated with the documents and other content that you guys are generating. And last, but certainly not least, maybe the most important of the bullet points is the ability to search. So as you put this information away, the ability to search and find things is critical. That's where you're really going to see the biggest time savings. So we talked about people wasting 50% of their time on that first slide, and really here's where you make up a lot of that time. And it's the ability to search by some portion of that metadata, whether it's client or matter number, some sort of category, a subject, a description that you tie to it, or keywords if the document is indexed and completely searchable. So searching is probably the most critical piece, and you really need to understand any tool you select what the search capabilities are, because that's where you're probably going to find the most time savings. Now that we've talked about managing a document, we're going to talk about sort of the archiving or the maintaining the history of that document. And there's a couple things to think about here. The first one is you really need to set up and maintain file statuses. So whether this is a work in process document, if it's final, if it's private, it's completed, whatever the categories are that you determine, that really is going to help you in the archiving and retention policy step. But you really need to think about that so that when you filter for documents as well, you can filter on just documents that are work in process. And if the document's been final, I don't need to look at it if I'm in the business of creating something new. The next item is setting policies for version control. And that's really policies amongst your users of what do you want to complete as a version or contain as versions. So there are some firms out there or some systems out there that require any change to maintain a version, and there are some that allow you to deem what a version is. And there are benefits to both sides. But I think what you really want to think about is the ability to set up those policies with your employees and determine when you need to make a change. A common example is you've got people who need to go in and correct something minor, like a spelling mistake or a title or something like that. Is that really considered changing the version of a document? Do you really need to maintain a history of that, or can you just go in and make minor changes, keep trying to make a change, but not maintain an individual version of the document? The third item here is controlling user rights and responsibilities, and this has to go to rights to delete a document. Who has the ability to move documents from one file area to the next? Think about your users and what their responsibilities are and what security rights they have. Is someone who needs administrative rights to the system to be able to make all changes? Do they need to be the ability to edit documents, or maybe for certain sections are they only read-only user rights? Those are things you need to think through as well. And the last is determining your retention policy. So the laws and the courts and things like that determine specific retention policies for certain document types, but you also need to have your own retention policies for certain things. There may be documents that you want to maintain indefinitely, whereas there could be some other documents you say, hey, this has a 2-year retention policy or a 5-year retention policy, and you want to create those policies, but also have the system drive those as well, so that you can go in at any point and either they automatically purge themselves, or you run a report that says here are the documents that are available for purge based on your retention policy. So just a couple things to think through with regards to archiving. The next thing that we've got set here is just some things to consider that might be sort of separate from some of the other screens we've talked about. And these really go to just selecting systems in general, but are especially important in sort of this content management space. And the first is, what's your deployment model going to be? Are you going to go with an on-premise model versus a hosted solution? And there are certainly pluses and minuses to both systems, and you really need to think through what your needs are. If you're a firm that has a lot of users in one location, they spend a majority of their time in that office, and speed is the number one priority, then you may say, hey, we definitely need an on-premise solution. If you have people who are traveling very frequently, accessing computers that might not be their own and things of that nature, then maybe a hosted model is the case. But you really need to think that through as part of your decision-making process. The next piece is security, which we touched on a little bit on the last document for user needs, but also think about security from a document standpoint. What does the security level of the document need to be? In addition to what users have the right to access it, what are the changes for documents and things of that nature as well. You also want to talk about security from a mobile standpoint. That's obviously a hot buzzword for everybody at this point, and it brings into play a lot of issues with regards to people bringing their own devices into organizations and things of that nature. And you really just need to think that through. That's sort of related to the third bullet point, which is not only mobile access but also remote users. So in this day and age, obviously, it's very common for people to need to access information on the road, from remote offices, from home, on mobile devices, whatever the case is. And you really need to think through what your policy is going to be for accessing that information. Are you going to require people to use a VPN or a Citrix connection? Or when you go with mobile devices, are you going to allow them to view only documents on the device, or are they going to be able to download and actually carry that document on the device as well? So there's a lot of things that you need to think through and set up policies around. The fourth item here talks about integration with other systems, and we mentioned this a few times before, but that's really important when you select a system. because knowing the tools that you're going to integrate with, whether it's just your email system like Outlook or your time and billing system or some other package, knowing the requirements of that system and what the capabilities for integration would be are going to help you determine what paperless solutions make sense for you. So you want to think through what systems you need to integrate with, what their requirements are, and are the systems you're considering for a paperless office able to integrate with those tools. And the last is the implementation and training model. So we see a lot of people who shortchange themselves in this space. They go out and spend all kinds of time analyzing the system, selecting the right package, purchasing it, and then leave themselves short as far as the time and the money to implement and train the users correctly. And you need to think through a lot of things. The biggest one is who's going to be using this. Is it a firm-wide implementation, or is it going to go to specific groups, specific users? What type of information are you putting into the system? Is it all document types, or is it specific document types? Is it a final document repository? Whatever the case is, you need to really think that through and save time and come up with a training model that works for your users. No one knows your users better than you, and so when you come up with a model, determine what everybody needs. One-on-one training, if group training is going to work, if you want to use a sort of train-the-trainer mentality where you train some admin-level users and let them sort of roll it out to various groups, but all things that you really need to consider in the process.
Thanks, Ben. At this point, we just want to take a couple minutes and tell you a little bit more about us. I work for ABBYY Software. ABBYY is a company that develops technologies around recognition and data extraction so that businesses of all types can be more productive. We have law firms, we have corporate legal departments, and we have a number of leading discovery vendors who use ABBYY products to capture and convert and extract data from all kinds of documents. There's a little bit of information about the size of our company, but I would encourage you to come to our website, abby.com, and learn more about us and more about data capture. Ben, did you want to share a little bit about Conarc?
Sure, yeah. I work for Conarc, and we're a developer of enterprise-class software products as well as custom solutions. We're headquartered in Alpharetta, Georgia. We're founded in 1996, and we really consider our core competency to be connecting users to their own information. So all of the tools that we develop or the custom solutions that we implement are all around making a user's life easier. We come in and evaluate the places in your organization that you manage content and talk about ways to make that more accessible and give you that central point of truth. You'll see here we believe strongly in an open architecture model and in integration. So we build all of our products in standard, sort of Microsoft level tools that you could go out and find people to administer. And then we talk about, how do we open up these systems for integration? How do we, get our products to work in your existing environment so that you do get the benefit of the time savings and the issues that can be resolved with document management. The product that we offer that sort of fits best in this space is a product called iChannel. It's our flagship tool, and it's really a platform for integration and content management. It was released in 2001, and certainly our goal is to make the user's life easier. So if there's people who have interest in either our product or the ABBYY product, certainly reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk to you about what it is that the tools do or provide you with personalized demos and things of that nature.
So with that, here is my contact information as well as Ben. If you have any additional questions about data capture or document management or document imaging or about our company, we encourage you to go ahead and get a hold of us. In the meantime, we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
If you have any questions about the material covered today, please reach out to Ben or Jackie at the contact information listed. Thanks for attending.